Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode from the Book of John. It's a very hot day in Limassol today, but we are so blessed to have sunshine. We're so blessed to be living on this beautiful island. And wherever you are today and whatever your circumstances around you, look for the beauty in it. Try and see God in the details because you will find Him and He's always beautiful and there's always a blessing in your life somewhere today. Okay, so today we're in the chapter 9 of the book of John. Today we're going to see the man that was born blind being healed by Jesus. So I'm going to start reading and then we'll delve a little bit deeper and see what it's speaking to us about our lives, about Jesus, about who He is and what He does and what His heart is like. So let's start. Now as Jesus passed by, He saw a man who was blind from birth. And His disciples asked Him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When He had said these things, He spat on the ground and made clay with His saliva, and He anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And He said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Therefore the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, Is not this he who sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. He said, I am he. Therefore they said to him, How were your eyes opened? He answered and said, A man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and I received sight. Then they said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. They said to the blind man again, What do you say about him because he opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him, that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him who had received the sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was blind. But by what means he now sees we do not know, or who opened his eyes we do not know. He is of age, ask him, he will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, Give God the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. Then they said to him again, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, Why, this is a marvelous thing that you do not know where he is from, yet he has opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, But if anyone is a worshipper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered and said to him, "You were completely born in sins, and you are teaching us?" And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you." Then he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, that those who see may be made blind." Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, 'We see,' therefore your sin remains." It's fascinating to see how once again Jesus performs this miracle on the Sabbath. This is the excuse that the Pharisees again used to say that he is not from God, because if he was from God, he would not be performing this miracle on a Sabbath. But somewhere along the line, it seems that they lost the true meaning of what a Sabbath was. A Sabbath was a day that was set aside to worship God, to be with God, a day not to work the earthly works, but to be in God's presence, to remember what God had done, to thank God for what he had done. When Jesus healed, he was working the works of God. He was not working the earthly works. And in Matthew, the book of Matthew in the Bible, there is a place where Jesus tells them that go and find out what the meaning says, that I desire mercy over sacrifice. Like beyond your religious duties and the religious acts that you are required to do, God desires mercy even above that. And as Jesus healed a blind man, it was the mercy of God that was in operation at that time, that he wanted to heal his creation and restore him to the fullness of who he was meant to be. That was mercy. But instead, the Pharisees could not see beyond the law, beyond the religious duties. At the time, there was also a great stigma on those that were born with a disability, because they believed that this was because of their sins of the fathers. But we see Jesus very clearly saying here that and answering his disciples that neither of those were true, that it was not because he had sinned, because how could he sin before he was even born, and it was not because his parents had sinned, but it was because through him the glory of God was going to be seen. There are some things that we will never truly be able to grasp, but what we can understand is that God is always good, and that God always has a plan that will bring life. We see also that by now there was great opposition to Jesus, and because he tells us that the parents of the blind man were scared to even say anything, because they knew that if anybody said that this is the Christ, they would be sent out of the synagogue. So the blind man was called to answer for himself. And I just love the answer that he gives the Pharisees of how can you say that a man that is not of God could do the works of God? How can a sinner open anybody's eyes? And how amazing that the blind man could see more than the ones that were looking on but could not see. The words of Jesus at the end of this chapter really have to make us think. He said, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say we see, therefore your sin remains. I feel this is so important because it talks about our humility. There was no humility in the Pharisees. They were so full of ego and pride, so assured of themselves, so convinced that they knew the truth, so convinced that they were not blind but they could see. And because of that, their mistakes were counted against them. Jesus said, if you were blind, you would have no sin. You know, Jesus doesn't count against us things that we do wrong that we have no idea that they are wrong. If we walk life in humility, always being teachable, always being open to consider that maybe we haven't got the full truth, but we are willing to hear God's truth and willing to change to be how He wants us to be, then that's the kind of heart He's looking for. So this week, as you just take some time out every day to get to know Jesus more, read through chapter 9 again. And as you read it, ask God to bring life to it and speak through it to you for your life.